Hello and welcome to Itenert. Today, we bring you the top 10 poorest countries in Africa in 2025, ranked by GDP per capita. Africa is a continent rich in natural resources, cultural heritage, and human potential. From gold and diamonds to oil and fertile lands, Africa has the ingredients for economic success. However, despite this immense wealth, some nations continue to struggle with extreme poverty, weak infrastructure, and economic stagnation. Many of these countries face long-standing challenges such as political instability, corruption, armed conflicts, poor governance, and climate change. While some nations have made strides in economic reforms and development projects, the road to prosperity remains difficult. Economic mismanagement, external debt burdens, and dependency on a single sector, such as agriculture or natural resources, often prevent sustainable growth. But before we begin, here's a thought-provoking question for you. What do you think is the biggest obstacle to economic development in Africa? Is it corruption, poor leadership, or external interference? Let us know in the comments below and let's start a discussion. Now, let's count down from the worst to the best among Africa's poorest nations based on GDP per capita. Some of the countries on this list might surprise you. So stay tuned and make sure to watch until the end to get the full picture of Africa's economic landscape. Niger remains one of Africa's poorest countries, despite its abundant uranium reserves due to its low industrialization and heavy reliance on agriculture. With over 80% of its land covered by the Sahara Desert, food security is a major concern, as recurring droughts and desertification make farming increasingly difficult. The lack of economic diversification leaves Niger vulnerable to market fluctuations, while rapid population growth puts immense pressure on public services, healthcare, and education. High unemployment, particularly among the youth, continues to worsen poverty and social inequalities. Political instability has further hindered economic development, with frequent military coups and governance crises deterring investment and slowing reforms. Insecurity in the Sahel region, due to extremist groups, disrupts economic activities and weakens state control. Despite these challenges, investments in education, infrastructure, and economic diversification could help Niger build a more stable and prosperous future, but progress remains slow due to ongoing governance issues and environmental challenges. Despite its rich biodiversity and natural beauty, Madagascar faces significant economic struggles due to weak industrialization, political instability, and environmental challenges. The country's economy is heavily reliant on agriculture, particularly vanilla and rice production, but frequent cyclones, deforestation, and soil degradation have severely affected productivity. Many farmers lack access to modern farming techniques and resources, making it difficult to increase yields and improve livelihoods. Poor infrastructure and limited market access further hinder economic growth, making it challenging for businesses to expand and attract foreign investment. Political instability, including past coups and governance crises, has weakened institutions and slowed development efforts. Additionally, widespread poverty and unemployment persist, leaving much of the population struggling with limited access to education, healthcare, and basic services. Without economic diversification, stronger governance, and investment in infrastructure, Madagascar's economic challenges are likely to continue. Liberia, Africa's first independent republic, has faced decades of economic challenges stemming from civil wars, the Ebola outbreak, and political instability. The country depends heavily on rubber and timber exports, but corruption and weak governance have prevented sustainable growth. Despite efforts to improve infrastructure and attract foreign investment, unemployment remains high, and basic services such as healthcare and education are underfunded. Despite being one of the most resource-rich countries in the world, the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC, remains the seventh poorest country in Africa, with a GDP per capita of just $1,908. The DRC boasts vast reserves of gold, diamonds, copper, cobalt, and other valuable minerals. Yet these resources have done little to uplift the majority of its population from poverty. Years of conflict, political instability, and corruption have undermined the country's ability to develop strong institutions and infrastructure. Many Congolese citizens still lack access to basic necessities such as clean water, electricity, and quality healthcare. The rural areas in particular suffer from severe underdevelopment, with poor roads, limited schools, and minimal government presence. Economically, the DRC's growth is heavily dependent on the export of raw materials, making it vulnerable to fluctuations in global commodity prices. Despite some progress in recent years, the lack of economic diversification and widespread unemployment continue to hinder the country's development. Efforts to improve the situation have been made through international aid and investment in infrastructure and agriculture, but corruption and weak governance remain significant barriers. The country's large and youthful population presents potential for future growth if properly harnessed, but until systemic reforms take root, the DRC will likely continue to struggle with poverty despite its immense natural wealth. Somalia has faced decades of conflict and instability, making it one of Africa's most fragile economies. Ongoing security threats, piracy, and weak government institutions have severely limited economic development and deterred foreign investment. The lack of a stable political environment has hindered infrastructure projects and industrialization, preventing the country from fully utilizing its resources. Despite these challenges, livestock exports and remittances from the Somali diaspora remain crucial sources of income for many citizens. However, Somalia continues to struggle with underdeveloped infrastructure, poor access to education, and inadequate healthcare services. Droughts and food insecurity further worsen living conditions, leaving millions dependent on humanitarian aid. The combination of climate change, armed conflict, and weak governance makes economic recovery a daunting task. Without stronger institutions, long-term stability, and investment in key sectors, Mali's economy is unlikely to see significant improvement in the near future. Mozambique's economy has been severely impacted by political instability, corruption, and frequent natural disasters, including cyclones and floods. Despite having vast natural gas reserves, poor resource management, and limited infrastructure have hindered the country's ability to capitalize on its wealth. The lack of industrial development and economic diversification has left many Mozambicans struggling to find stable employment, forcing a large portion of the population to rely on subsistence farming. However, extreme weather conditions frequently disrupt agriculture, worsening food insecurity and poverty levels. In addition to environmental challenges, foreign debt and inflation have further weakened Mozambique's economy. Corruption has eroded public trust in institutions, making it difficult to implement effective policies for growth and development. While the country has attracted foreign investment in the energy sector, economic gains have yet to significantly improve living standards for the majority of the population. Without stronger governance, investment in infrastructure, and economic reforms, Mozambique will continue to struggle with poverty and slow development. Malawi, known as the warm heart of Africa, relies heavily on agriculture, with tobacco and tea exports playing a crucial role in its economy. However, climate change and unpredictable weather patterns have made farming increasingly difficult, leading to low crop yields and food insecurity. Since agriculture employs the majority of the population, extreme weather events such as droughts and floods have devastating effects on livelihoods. The country's limited industrialization further restricts economic diversification, leaving Malawi vulnerable to external shocks. In addition to its agricultural struggles, Malawi faces high population growth, inadequate infrastructure, and a weak healthcare system. Limited access to quality education and job opportunities contributes to widespread poverty and unemployment, preventing many citizens from improving their standard of living. Despite efforts to attract foreign investment and implement economic reforms, corruption and poor governance continue to hinder progress. Without stronger economic policies, investment in infrastructure, and climate adaptation strategies, Malawi's path to development remains challenging. The Central African Republic, CAR, has endured years of violent conflict, leaving its economy in ruins and social stability severely weakened. Despite being rich in natural resources such as gold, diamonds, and uranium, the country struggles to benefit from its wealth due to political instability, corruption, and weak governance. Armed groups control vast areas, limiting government authority and making it difficult to enforce policies or attract meaningful foreign investment. As a result, economic activity remains highly informal, with much of the population relying on subsistence farming and small-scale trade to survive. The ongoing insecurity has also worsened living conditions, with millions suffering from food insecurity, inadequate healthcare, and a lack of basic services. Schools and hospitals are often underfunded or destroyed due to conflict, leaving many citizens without access to education or medical care. Humanitarian aid plays a critical role in supporting the population, but long-term economic recovery remains uncertain. Without stronger governance, disarmament of rebel groups, and investment in infrastructure and industries, CAR will continue to struggle with poverty and instability. Burundi remains one of Africa's poorest nations, struggling with ethnic conflicts, weak infrastructure, and minimal industrial development. The economy is heavily dependent on agriculture, but poor soil quality, deforestation, and overpopulation have led to declining crop yields and food insecurity. With limited access to modern farming techniques and irrigation systems, many farmers struggle to produce enough to sustain their families. Frequent political tensions and instability have further discouraged investment and disrupted economic progress, keeping the country trapped in a cycle of poverty. Beyond agriculture, limited trade opportunities and weak infrastructure have made economic diversification difficult. Most of Burundi's population lives in rural areas with little to no access to electricity, clean water, or adequate healthcare services. High unemployment rates, widespread poverty, and poor education systems continue to hinder development. While efforts have been made to improve the situation through foreign aid and economic reforms, corruption and governance issues remain significant obstacles to sustainable growth. Without stronger institutions, investment in infrastructure, and conflict resolution, Burundi's path to economic recovery will remain slow and uncertain. South Sudan ranks as the poorest country in Africa, struggling with overwhelming economic challenges since gaining independence in 2011. The country has been plagued by civil war, corruption, and extreme poverty, preventing meaningful economic progress. Despite having vast oil reserves, which could serve as a foundation for development, economic mismanagement and ongoing conflicts have left the majority of the population struggling to survive. Inflation remains high, and basic services such as education, healthcare, and electricity are severely lacking. The fragile economy is further weakened by frequent food shortages and limited job opportunities, making daily life incredibly difficult for millions. Many South Sudanese rely on humanitarian aid for food, healthcare, and shelter, as infrastructure remains severely underdeveloped. Roads, hospitals, and schools are scarce, especially in rural areas, making it difficult to provide essential services. Ethnic conflicts and political instability continue to fuel violence, displacing thousands of people and discouraging investment. While international organizations have provided support, long-term economic recovery remains uncertain without stronger governance, peacebuilding efforts, and diversified economic policies. South Sudan's path to stability and prosperity will require major reforms, investment in infrastructure, and a commitment to ending conflict. And that's the top 10 poorest countries in Africa in 2025. Poverty in these nations is driven by a combination of conflict, corruption, weak governance, and climate-related challenges. However, with the right policies, investment in education, and sustainable economic planning, these countries have the potential to overcome their struggles. If you found this video informative, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more insightful content about Africa's economy and development. See you in the next video.